In 1998, Edward Larson joined us on Book Notes to discuss his book, Summer for the Gods, The Scopes Trial, and America's continuing debate over science and religion. The book examines the debate between evolutionist and creationist theories that marked the Scopes Trial of 1925.
Edward J. Larson, author of Summer for the Gods, The Scopes Trial, and America's continuing debate over science and religion. What did it feel like the first moment you knew you were going to get a Pulitzer Prize for this?
I was just shocked. Stunned was the right word for it. I knew I'd been nominated months before, but I wasn't expecting it. I knew the day it was supposed to be announced, but I'd been invited to go up and give a talk at my mother's alma mater. She was still alive when the invitation came, and she was going to go up and join me. And I was in the air when the announcement was made. I wasn't waiting at the phone like you're supposed to be. And then I didn't know anything when I got off the plane. And since the driver didn't say anything, I didn't expect anything had happened. I was driven back to the hotel, and when I got to the conference center at this little college town, here was the receptionist there with this standing behind the desk with, it seemed like the entire staff behind her. She was holding this great big thick pile of phone messages about an inch thick. She had this silly grin on her face, and she said, "Mr. Larson," she sort of said, "we have a lot of messages for you. Congratulations." And I just said, "Congratulations for what?" And midway through the answer, it just dawned on me what it must be. I just was stunned. It was wonderful.
What's it mean to get a Pulitzer Prize?
Well, in my profession, it's the greatest there is. It's a tribute to writing, and I love to write. I love crafting words. I like to do research. I like history. When I was going to college, this sort of captures it. I had always thought I could write. I came from rural Ohio, and where we didn't get much particular training, and I learned to love literature by reading, not by writing. And I'd love to read various novelists, but I also liked Dickens, and I liked Hawthorne, and I also liked Virgil and some of the classics, and Shakespeare. And I loved to write, and I thought I could do it. And then I got to college, and my freshman comp teachers were very, very discouraging. But I liked it, and what I always wanted to do was be a history teacher. And I had sort of given up on my college, and I was going to leave, but I had to get fresh junior standing to transfer into University of Michigan. And I thought, well, for my last semester here, I'll take James McGregor Burns, a Pulitzer Prize winner. I've heard a wonderful human being, and I knew it was just a course where you'd write one big paper. It had to be a paper on your congressman. And I just poured my heart out in writing that paper, and I was going to be leaving the college anyway, and here he was. I knew he could write because he had a Pulitzer Prize. He had two, actually, but that's why I knew he could write. And I, of course, loved his books on Roosevelt. And I'd left the college after I turned it in, and because I had to be out to Michigan, University of Michigan, to start, and he sent the paper back to me, and it was an A+. And with wonderful comments in it. And that's when I had confidence I could write. So winning the Pulitzer Prize was special for me because it had that history, that connection with Jim Burns.
I guess my next question would be, where do you teach history today?
Well, now I teach history at the University of Georgia. I have joint appointment. I teach both history in the history department and law in the law school. I also have a law degree, so I combine the two.
How long have you been there?
I've been there about 9 years. I used to work up here on the Hill. And
well,
I worked for the House Education and Labor Committee when Carl Perkins was the chairman of the committee. But I had finished my PhD. I finished up my PhD actually while I was here in history of science. And so I always wanted to teach. It was my dream. If you'd asked me when I was 5 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, and remember I was in this rural, small town that was not very academic, and I'd tell them I wanted to be a college teacher in a college town. Kenyon College was nearby, Gambier, Ohio, and that was sort of my vision. And everybody else thought it was funny. I mean, most people wanted to be firemen or policemen. And, but that's what I wanted. And so I continued to work up on the Hill after finishing my PhD until I got an offer from a school that would be in a college town. Because most schools, by that time I knew I didn't want to teach at a college like Kenyon. I wanted to be at a research institution because I grew to love research and writing, and I wanted the time to do that as well as teaching, which I also like.
By the way, where did you get your PhD?
Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin-Madison.
You start off in the very beginning of this book, and you say, you dedicate this book in memory of my father, Rex Larson, a Darrow-like criminal lawyer, and here you have in the book a picture of Clarence Darrow. Why was your father a Darrow-like criminal lawyer?
Well, he always admired Darrow. Darrow was also from a small town in rural Ohio, Kinsman, Ohio, which isn't too far away. And then he'd gone off and taught school in Ashtabula, Ohio, and then he went to University of Michigan to law school. My father followed in his footsteps. He came from a small town in Ohio. He had similar beliefs and ideas. He'd also taught high school in Ashtabula, Ohio, and then he went off to University of Michigan to law school because that's where Clarence Darrow went. And then he came out and wanted to do criminal law, which is what Darrow liked. Darrow was his idol.
Who was Clarence Darrow?
Clarence Darrow was, oh, what a man. Probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, criminal defense lawyer in American history. He had grown up in Ohio and went off to Michigan, but then he went to Chicago to be an attorney. And he started off as a classic Democrat. In fact, he was nominated for Congress. He would have won, but he was too busy campaigning for the presidential ticket led by William Jennings Bryan that he lost by about 100 votes. But he became increasingly, concerned about government excesses. This was when the Haymarket riot was put down, the Pullman strike. He defended Eugene V. Debs and became increasingly associated with defending labor at a time when labor was being sorely oppressed. And he represented a series of great labor cases leading up to the McNamara brothers, the bombing of the Los Angeles Times building. And in that case, there were questions about how he handled it. There were issues of perjury. And for a while, it dimmed his reputation. But he came back after that, mostly representing murder defendants, because he was deeply opposed to the capital punishment, leading up to the Leopold Loeb case, which was his most famous until the following year when he handled the Scopes case. But in addition to being a great trial lawyer, he had a whole nother reputation. He was also, at the time, America's leading, I guess you'd call it, anti-clericalist. He fought, he was like Tom Paine or Ingersoll, who argued for the merits of agnosticism and criticized the promotion of church through government. He was a popular speaker, lecturer, writer.
So he ran for Congress?
Ran for Congress early. That was before he became more of notorious for some, famous for others. But he was a hero to people who questioned the establishment Protestantism that dominated the day. He sort of had a role like Carl Sagan did more recently.
What year was the Scopes trial?
Scopes trial was 1925.
What was America like then?
America was, it was in the middle of the roaring 20s. America was into media sensation. And of course, this was the greatest media sensation of a media sensation-loving decade. It was also a time when we were deep into the return to normalcy of the Republican Party, coined by Warren Harding, but then Coolidge was president. And there was a reaction. It wasn't long after the Red Scare, and it was during a time when, while America was changing, jazz music was king, women's suffrage was brand new, teen smoking was widespread, dancing, all these changes were coming. America was urbanizing it before we'd been a rural people. So there was a lot of change, and there was a lot of reaction to that change. And with that reaction came the rise of fundamentalism in religion, which was a reaction to modernism and liberalism within the church.
So we're talking about 1925, Cal Coolidge is president. We've talked about Clarence Darrow, who plays a big role in the story. Where was the trial?
The trial was in Dayton, Tennessee, a small town in Republican East Tennessee.